Hello and welcome to the Creative Life Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Qureshi, but you can call me Q. Welcome to E.A. Williams, aka Annie Williams, author and fabulady from the city of Houston, Texas. Hi.
Hi, thanks for having me. This is exciting.
It is. I've been wanting to have you on for a while, because I've known you for about a year, only
Yeah,
online through we belong to a writing group
yeah,
together.
the Armadillo Authors Society.
Yeah.
We're like just little floating heads on our screen
Yeah. Well, I did get to meet you IRL last month at
Yeah.
Rowanna's
At her
her engagement party.
engagement slash wedding because they're off in Vegas and got married and yeah.
Yeah. I'm kind of I think that's pretty smart actually, getting married in Vegas.
My day job is as a makeup artist and I have worked a lot of weddings. Yeah, I started out as a special effects makeup artist and I used to build monsters. And then I came home for a little while and I'm not good at sitting on my hands. So I was like, I'll do some weddings. And then like switched over and I was like, oh, I really like doing like not ha working 17-hour days and the whole like, oh, gotta get to set, gotta be there all the time. And I was like, all right. Moved into doing glamour makeup, did weddings for 5 years almost exclusively. So when I say like if I ever get married, it's gonna be like wedding in Vegas, little white chapel. You're gonna get an email that's like, hey, I did it.
I love
It's
it.
just
I had
yeah.
no idea. I had no idea that you did makeup. Like I've always seen your makeup. Like I've seen your author photos and I'm like, dang, I wonder who did her makeup. I thought that for
It's
real. It was you.
yeah.
Amazing.
And I work with a lot of photographers now, so I have the great privilege of being like, "Hey, remember how you like me? Do you want to take my picture?"
Oh,
I
perfect.
have some my author photo that's on my website is actually a good friend of mine took my picture and she was like, I can't look at one more selfie that you've done on any of your branded content." And
Yeah.
that was a fun day. She was like, "Bring a black dress and just do your hair, I swear to God." She was great.
That is awesome. They're really nice photos, actually. I kind of have it as a bar because I don't have any. I really need to get some author photos done. I haven't actually had a proper headshot in forever. And I keep thinking, oh, I'll wait until until I lose a few pounds, until I get my hair here, or, all these
Yeah.
things that you're like, but
Oh, we always call ourselves these. Yeah.
yeah. And in the meantime, I'm looking at other people's photos, and like yours was one that I'm like, dang, that's what I want. Because yours doesn't look like a freaking, uh, what is it, like a real estate
Yeah, it's not like the like
person.
that's right here. It's like buy this house. I'm super trustworthy. Um, I I the photographer that I had do these photos is she does like artistic portraiture and she also does boudoir. So she was like I've worked with her for many years now and she was just like you come in, you tell me what you want. I have a couple that I look like oh like ha 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 and I don't like them as much. I was like no, I like this like intense sultry look. I'm like, anytime anyone asks for a picture, they're like, oh, we're gonna do an interview or a written anything. I'm like, this picture, if I could put it on my license, like, I would put it on my license. I'm just like, I'm waiting for them to be able to be like, I'm just gonna like tape it in there, maybe. Like, I think that would be fine if I got pulled over, right? If I
Yeah.
just had like
Yeah.
taped in this.
Yeah. Or at least just keep one and be like, here, officer, here's my license. And hey, here's another photo. This one's
Yeah,
better.
this is the one that actually like
Yeah.
although I do have a great story about my license picture because I got mine renewed like 2020, like in the middle of the shutdown.
Oh,
And my girl took my picture 7 times. She was like, you did your makeup to come to the DMV. And I was like, I haven't left the house in like a month. I I had to do something. I had to put on makeup. And she was like, I got you. And took my picture 7 times. I was
nuh-uh.
like, I ride into battle for this woman. She was so great.
Is it a good photo?
It is. It's if I had I would show it to you. It's like a like legitimately like good photo, as good
Wow.
as those cameras can be. It's
Yeah.
like,
Even still.
yeah.
Man, I look dead in my I look so bad in mine. It's not even funny. It's shame. Shame.
The one
Um
before it, I look like I am having an out of body experience. I look like, you know, those like trail cameras? That's what I look
yes.
like in the other one. And this one, I'm like, oh no, I look like a human being. You can tell I have on makeup. It's great.
That's awesome. Uh well, the thing is, I was going to say that you write books about vampires.
I do. Yeah.
So you're you're like, yeah, I do. So the photo that you have, which is kind of sultry, is perfect. It's perfect. I'm not sure I could get away with that.
I think, you know, if I wrote something, I always think that and this is gonna get into like this kind of like silly like idea of like writing and who authors are. But do you remember like the first, I don't know if you have, but if you ever read Anne Rice
Uh-huh.
and sort of like you like any of the press that she did for Interview with the Vampire or any of those books, she always like dressed up and got like really like gothic, and it really, you were like, oh yeah, of course this is the woman who wrote this book.
Right.
And I watched a documentary about her, and she was not that way in private. She was like just like a normal person and just very chill and relaxed. And um I I was like, oh, I like the idea that like she knew who the fans wanted her to be and like who she wanted to be for those books. And I kind of like the idea of like building yourself up as like an author brand, or like as that like the mythos of you as an author, to be
Yeah.
like around like the kind of things that you like to write, the kind of things you like to read. I don't think we get to sort of like romanticize and mythologize ourselves as much as like they used to get to like think of Lord Byron or Edgar Allan Poe, like the way that we talk about them, and you're like, oh, like even Mary Shelley, like
Yeah.
they had days where they wish they had sweatpants, I'm sure. Like, but at the same time, we're like when we talk about them, we talk about like all of this cool like spooky shit. And
Ruffles. Ruffles.
yeah, ruffles and like gothic
Velvet.
literature.
Yeah.
I want that vibe to sort of like if you see one of my books, you're like, oh yeah, of course that's the person who wrote it.
Yeah.
So,
No, you know what? I actually really love that. I do. Like I feel like that is in some respects, I feel like Anne Rice was ahead of her time with that
yeah.
because now it's just expected that if you're a writer, you have this public persona,
Yeah.
right? And I don't, she came along before we had social media and all of that, but she would have crushed it back in the day. I mean, she still crushed it, but like just this idea that like she understood the brand way
Yeah.
before anyone else did as a writer, I think.
I think there's just a lot of things now, like obviously like no one is perfect with what they do or how they handle their business, but like I think seeing like loving Interview with the Vampire and seeing that sort of like space where she took vampire literature seriously in a way
Hmm.
that sort of, I mean, back when we were like Dracula and Camilla, like those things, you're like, oh yeah, that's a serious literature kind of, but also it's kind of a penny dreadful. And then you get to like the space of like Hammer films where vampires are like just kind of the butt of the joke and also always the bad guy. And then you're like, okay, well, it's just really romance novels that have vampire heroes, and then it's like maybe comic books. Um, and then you get into Anne Rice and you're like, oh no, you can write about them as like flawed, fully dynamic characters and be serious in the way that you treat them, the way that you would treat a human character or a human-based story. And I really like the idea that she was like, I'm going to take my writing seriously, I'm going to take my character seriously, I'm going to take that sort of realm of genre that has been sort of mistreated as at the worst and neglected at best, and
Hmm.
say I'm going to treat these people seriously and these fans seriously and give them what they want I really appreciate that as a fan and as a writer. I kind of hope to emulate, at least in some part, in my own way.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think I was actually thinking about that recently and about how, a lot, I think a lot of people, we've all talked about this, just the lack of, I don't know, everything is ironic now. Everything is ironic, right?
Yeah.
And any kind of earnestness is sort of made fun of or cringe or whatever. And I was thinking to myself that to be good at your art, and I can, all art, writing, painting, whatever, you have to take yourself seriously, right?
Yeah.
You have to be like, no, this is an actual thing I am producing and putting into the world for the purpose of moving other people. And yeah, sure, there's a place for irony, but also there's a place for not irony. There's a place for this earnestness and this pure, just sort of love for the subject. And especially, like you're saying, the subject that doesn't get enough respect. And I think that is almost universal. Like any of the like genre fiction,
Yeah.
right, is not treated by the industry as, or it hasn't been treated as serious.
I mean, even when you're looking into like high fantasy, where you're talking
Hmm.
about the Second World, you're talking about Game of Thrones and The Witcher, things that are very well respected within the genre, and now, even now, are just now getting that sort of respect and treatment in the way that, you know, like high literature or like lit fic has been getting for a really long time. Which give them their flowers. There are some beautiful lit fic books that you're just like, you'll read it and it'll stick with you for the rest of your life. But there are as many genre books that do that for me. And so I kind of get that space where I'm like, I like the people who like genre will read like I've never been to a conference, like a fantasy conference or a sci-fi conference, and talked to people who enjoy genre who aren't also like, oh my God, like I also have you read this book and it's a thriller or it's a women's fiction or it's a romance and it's completely outside of the genre and be like, no, but the characters remind me and they'll read anything. And it's that openness that I really appreciate within the genre that's like you get the chance to explore and take your art seriously in like an experimental way that like when you're writing like a road trip book, it's just not the same. Like you can't really have a vampire in a road trip book if it's going to be lit fic. It's going to immediately make it genre,
That's
like
right.
even if
That's
you
right.
do the same themes.
Is
So
that fair? I ask you this because I actually really chafe against that. Like I don't like that at all. I adore surrealism. I adore stuff that doesn't make sense. I want my mind fucked when I
yeah,
read a book, right? And I don't care whether it's high fiction or whether it's pulp fiction. I don't care. If it's going to take me, whether it's Toni Morrison or whether it's Tom Robbins, I want my brain blown.
yeah.
Yeah. And it feels really unfair that that's not that we insist that the best of the best literature be grounded in some kind of, for lack of a better word, reality.
I I hate it.
Yeah.
I think there's like my degree is in film. I don't have a huge formal education in literature. I have a lot of classes that I've taken that never ended up in a degree, but I always knew when I went into film school that what I wanted was to make horror movies. I wanted to build monsters. And every concept, like every class that I took, every time somebody would be like, "Well, what do you want to do with your life? What do you want? What kind of movies do you want to make?" And I'm like, "I want to make horror movies." And the response, quite literally from every single person I told this to, said, "Oh, so you want to sell out like immediately?" And it was like, okay, no, like I selling out is like when you do something that you don't want to do for the money because you got to pay rent. Not, hey, I want to do horror movies for all this. And they just couldn't wrap their head around it. And I kept having to explain to them like every movie innovation, every storytelling innovation that you see in cinema, it's not quite the same in literature, but there's definitely a crossover. Like the innovation happened in horror first because horror is the like wicked stepchild, right? It's the like the one who's not allowed to sit in the front. Like
Mhm.
this is, like we trapped her in the attic kind of genre, and but it still makes the money. It keeps the studios running and it keeps like so you get to do all this experimental weird shit in
Yeah.
horror, and then if it works, you see it 6 months later at the Oscars and they're winning awards for that. And it actually happened on a micro budget indie project, like, and that person had to like just like sell their kidneys to get funded. I
Right.
think that genre in literature is the exact same way. You see it like transfer over. Like now we have like it used to just be like, okay, we have horror literature, then we got thriller literature, and then thriller literature, like, oh, we have psychological thriller literature, and we have all of this, and you get all of these subgenres that are really just like you could just shove all of those back to like that was fantasy first, it was sci-fi first, it was horror first, and then you just kind of like parse it out because people kind of get that like over intellectualization, if that
Hmm.
is a word or too many
Mm.
syllables, of like you like what you like. If it works, it works. You could
Yeah.
do anything as long as you do it well.
No, I completely agree with that. And I appreciate when I get surprised by things that I didn't necessarily, didn't expect from wherever. Like I'm kind of I mean, I am a fiction whore. Like I like whatever. If it's good, I like it, right? And I don't stick in these little boxes. I will say I am not a horror person and I am not a vampire person. And yet, I've read vampire literature, I've watched the books or watched the movies, and um, some of it is just like I loved Sinners. I fucking loved Sinners, dude. It
We could do a
blew
whole
that
podcast.
talk about blow your mind, right? Right. So if it's good, it's good. And I
Mhm.
feel like there's just not enough credence given to that. I feel like I do feel like, and man, I hate saying this because we are at a really bad anti-intellectual place in this country, but I do feel like a lot of times creativity and all these different creative, communities and whatever are over intellectualized. And then it becomes really I think that squeezes out a lot of the inspiration.
I when you were talking earlier and you're talking about like that the everything's ironic, everything sort of
Mm,
I think that this like kick that we've been on where we're trying to sort of like dumb things down, like literacy in that space of like intellectual like genius or whatever, however you want to refer to it, has sort of been lumped into this space where it has to be, in order for it to be intellectual, it has to be ironic and it has to be like kind of snobby and shitty
yeah,
and mean.
yeah.
And I like some of the smartest people that I have ever met in literature in all aspects of my life have been some of the kindest people, have been some of the most earnest people. And I think we have to kind of school ourselves, take ourselves seriously in a positive way and say, I'm actually going to be very genuine and I very genuinely love vampires. Like, I think that they can be fun, they can be campy, they can be silly, but they are also this amazing vessel to talk about so many other things. We can talk about grief with vampires. We can talk about our fear of mortality, but we can all, which are like kind of the obvious ones, but we can also talk about othering and like toxic masculinity. We can use it as a conversation to talk about money and wealth disparity. There's so many avenues that just saying like, hey, let's frame it in a vampire story. It makes it more palatable. It makes it something that like people want to engage with because it's kind of like, yeah, like it's just vampires. And you can say, just sit and read it and be like, okay, I'm taking the surface level, like high, whatever, of like just what's off the top. And then 2 years later, you're like, well, actually, you know what? I think maybe it meant that. Like, and you digest it and it's kind of sits with you. It's the way that like those childhood like TV shows that you watch that you were just like, oh no, like this is Blue's Clues. And then you're like, oh, damn it. Like, I
Yeah.
have been taking Blue's Clues mentality with me my whole life. Like, I think if
Yes.
like if we can just find a way to like level out and stop making being intellectual mean and
Uh,
snobby and say actually you can be really genuine, you can be kind, you can like engage in an intellectual way, in an earnest way. I think we could find a middle ground where we'll stop being like kind of like no, like I don't want to say illiterate because it's not really there, but it's leaning towards this like I don't want to engage with the higher levels of media in any form because of this like mean snobby aspect.
right. Right. I think like what comes to mind when you say that is The Good Place, which is very much about it's very philosophical, right?
Oh, yeah.
And it touches on all these really deep things, life, death, purpose, whatever. And yet it is absurd and ridiculous and hilarious, right? I think it's easier to do that in television or in film. But you're the film person. And I was actually surprised to read that when I read your bio. I was like, "Oh, that but it makes perfect sense because your writing is so cinematic. Like when you're writing the pieces that I've read, it's incredibly clear in my mind. And beautiful. Like just you you are really good at just creating a scene without being too wordy, right? Without being like, let me write 10 pages of a description. You make it very, very clear and you pay attention to a lot of different sensory elements to even a fantasy world, which, is just I mean, as a writer, I admire that a lot. And I really particularly loved your use of light in the piece you did for Mixed Bag of Tricks. And that inspired me a lot actually when I was writing my novel to pay attention more to light, right? Because we don't always like when you're reading like when you're reading descriptions of things, it tends to be very sort of, I don't know, just really like straightforward. But well, you know what? I'm not even going to try. You tell me because I am having a hard time putting my finger on it. I've thought about this a lot. What is it when you sit down to actually create a scene, how are you going about it apart from just writing the action and, delivering the plot? How are you creating the environment?
Okay, so I have two things that I think are working for me in creating a setting space. One, I am I my like all of my formal training is in screenwriting, right? I have a like I did all these like play I did do some playwriting, I'll say, because my minor's in theater. Shocking that I'm a theater kid, I know. But I wrote scripts, and so you get 3 sentences essentially at the top of a scene to establish where you are, and you can through the rest of your dialogue sort of establish like action and things like that. But there's not a lot of space to talk about, well, we're in like a wood paneled room, and this is the kind of chandelier that's on the ceiling. And when you are writing like a spec script, you're like, okay, I have to condense everything. I have to make the like have all of this come through so quickly and so shorthand that I really got used to writing these like little snippets that are like, okay, what color does this lighting evoke? What kind of feeling does that color bring you? Okay, so it's blue. It's a blue morning. Okay, the light streams in. You see that like you're when you're writing a script, you're taking into account like, okay, well, if they're talking, I want them in this room. I want light on their eyes. I want them to see like how are they going to look in this space. And so I was like, when I write now, I kind of imagine that because I do write in th close third, like so everything is kind of like this is the camera. So you as the audience are the camera going from scene to scene. So that's the first thing is like coming from a film background and saying like we can look at this from the outside and be as close as possible. It allows me like to take that second and then I get to play. Like once I like my first draft is I mean, it's so condensed. My editor is Brita is very much like, oh, a couple of times, I think the first time she ever did an edit for me, she was like, Annie, this is a white room. And I had never heard that phrase before. And she was like, no, like this is you have, I know exactly what your characters look like. I do not know what your room looks like. You have to give me something. And she was like, give me one to three descriptors. You don't need any more than that. Just give me three that are anchor points, and you can sort of fill in the rest by how your characters are interacting. So that brings me to the second point, which is I took a bunch of drafting classes in high school, and that drafting, like for architecture,
Okay.
I don't know why. I don't have an explanation. I was just following the dopamine.
Yeah.
And so I draw out all of my rooms. I have, okay, there's like a board back there. I have the tower from the books is, I literally like, I drew it out. All the apartments are all done out. And because my books are so heavily action packed, I have to know like, okay, well, there's a table there. If they hit the table, what's happening to the table? Like, so there's this kind of like very pragmatic part of my brain that's like, if I throw these two characters into a table, something's breaking because they are huge. One of them's a vampire, one of them's a Texas Ranger. Something's got to break. And there is that sort of like, if like
Yep.
this happens, and so this happens, kind of like causality to very, very real light, like places that I've built, mostly in my brain, but also on paper. I I could bring them out, but I am almost in like I'm actually not embarrassed. I'm going to be very genuine and cringy about this. I love doing it. I love taking the time to draw it out. I do it to scale. Like it's a whole process.
That's freaking awesome. And you know what? I feel like I'm taking a little workshop right now. Like, this is something I have never even considered, and it is such a good idea. And I'm going to do it from now on. I mean, I'm not going to draft shit out because I don't have
You
those
don't have to
skills.
go ham
Yeah.
like I did, but like there's something about saying like, oh, like okay, if it's an apartment, what kind of style of apartment does your character live in? I have my character Sebastian, he lives in a minimalist apartment in the Trans-Imperial Tower. And it's like big and it's masculine and it's always clean because he has OCD. And but he has his bedroom is the one place that he allows a mess to exist because he never makes his bed. And this was like a thing that I very clearly knew I wanted. I have this big scene in the first book where they're in his apartment and they transition into his bedroom, and you see that like space of like coming from what you present to the world and like moving into his inner world where he's like vulnerable. And it was like this big moment. And I was like, well, where's the fucking door? Like, and not just like in that metaphysical, like, oh, where's the door? Where's that moment of intimacy? Like, come from? But like, very physically, he picks her up and like carries her off to bed. And I needed to know if he turned left or right.
Mhm.
So it was like, okay, well, the easiest way to figure that out is I just sketched it out. I'm a little extra because I've taken all those classes, so I like have it all like here's the couch, here's how big the couch is. But when I put them on the couch and I could be like, okay, well, I can imagine I've been to a furniture store before. I can imagine what that couch looks like. Well, okay, like I've lived in many apartments. Where is the kitchen? If it's a minimalist apartment, it's probably like an open floor plan kitchen. But this man is hundreds of years old. He has money, so it's got to be nicer than that. So then I'm like on Zillow, like on expensive apartment Zillow, looking. I think there's levels to it that sort of like trail into like me on Zillow at 3 in the morning, just being like, oh, if I had $2 million. But I
That's
just,
awesome. Dude, I am so jazzed right now because this is actually a thing that I think I personally struggle with. And look, everybody has their own strengths and weaknesses, but the ability to really, really visualize things and then turn around and express in writing what those things are in a way that somebody else can then read it and understand it and get that picture. But the other thing about it is, and this is kind of what I was trying to say before, is that you don't do all the work for us, right? And I really love that because I feel like there's this tension where you want people to know where they are, you want to place them in a scene, you want to give them the vibe, but you don't want to make it so detailed that their imagination can't do the work because that's where that to me is the joy of the reading, right? Is like I want to start like building this out in my mind and I want to so if you're so you have this nice happy medium where you give us enough scaffolding, you give us this scene and it's very rich, but I don't feel like you're trying to force us to see what's in your head. You're allowing us as readers to like, okay, I'll take this and I'll see. And if we were to actually try to create that, in real life, it would look vastly different because we're two different people. And I love that.
I I really love the idea. And I think this comes like it all sort of like points back to like everyone's like history and educational like space, because it really informs who we are in the writing process. I've done a lot of improv, I've done a lot of like creative works that are with other people, they're collaborative. And when I'm writing, like I almost view it as like a collaborative process with the reader, which is I want them to have the same reaction I had the first time I read Dracula, which was I felt like I was Mina getting those letters. Like it felt like I was in the story. And every time you read a good piece of literature, you do find yourself in the story in some way. And it's because you the author has let you like have that space. They're leaving space for that other person, for the audience. And I think I have had uh, that really great experience of coming from it from a collaborative space where I'm like, oh yes, we always have to leave space for other people because they're gonna be on set, they're gonna be on stage. You like just because you wrote that screenplay doesn't mean you're going to get to direct it. It like more often than not, you're not going to. So you have to sort of give yourself over to the process as much as you can, knowing that like you're going to take it 99% of the way and that 1% is for the audience. And it's a really like, it's a sacred space for them. And whether they like your book or not, they gave it the time to try. And I always want to honor them with it, like assuming that they know exactly what I'm talking about. Like give them enough that like, if you're coming to it fresh, and you've never read a vampire novel before, there are a couple of things that I kind of explain through context because I don't want to explain to someone like, okay, a thrall is when a vampire uses their mind powers to make you. I want there to be context around that. So if you know and you read a lot of vampires, you're like, a thrall. That's the mind power thing. But if you haven't, you're like, oh, okay, so she's doing exactly what he wants. So that's what it is. I like giving the audience the benefit of the doubt in that way and leaving room for them. I think like being on movie sets and writing specifically for like movies and plays has given me that like, no, you have to leave the space. So it's
Yeah.
almost become like a habit.
That's super, super interesting. I had never thought about that. So I'm actually tomorrow. I'm interviewing a film professor. My friend Zachy is. I've interviewed him before, and he's coming back. And we like to talk about what makes film such a unique medium for storytelling. And I think it's just so interesting. And like, I'm not kidding. I didn't realize until I read your bio that you had this background. And then it was just like, aha, of course, that's why she's good at this, right? Because you are thinking that way. Um, but so where do you feel like, I mean, clearly you have, an amazing talent.
Thank you.
You've published what, a trilogy plus you've been part of anthologies. Is that
I've been,
right?
yeah, I've been part of 3 or 4 anthologies, and then the the fourth book I'm hoping comes out
Fourth.
next year. So it's going to be for Line of Tepes, and then that's going to be the core series. That'll be Emma's story arc that I've planned out. Uh,
Okay.
but the third one is did come out this year. So
Yeah, that's right.
it's
And we'll link to all of those in the show notes. I guess so. Then my question is, at what point did you decide to switch into writing novels? Because it is, like, I can see how your training has helped, but also it is a very different proposition than writing a screenplay.
it's I okay, so I my writing journey started a million years ago, and I it goes so far back. So when I was like you're gonna be like I don't need the whole life story, but
I do. I
as
do.
like when I was like um 11, I having a really hard time learning to read. Like, which is 11, you should not be having this like problem. This is, and I am like, people were literally telling my mom I was going to need to be in special ed. It was like a whole problem. And I was just not getting help, and I was like not understanding. And it's not because I was a stupid kid. My mom takes me to and thank God she did this. She took me to a tutor. Her name is Jennifer Wozni, and it's Power Learning, still exists. She's amazing. She was just like, oh, she sat down with me for 5 minutes. Why didn't you tell me she was dyslexic?
Oh my gosh.
And no one had mentioned dyslexia. I had all of the like, she was like, you're telling me that words are swimming on the page. You are the way when I'm asking you to spell something, you're spelling it phonetically. Like, you know what these letters are, you know all of this. It's just like your brain is working against you because you've only been taught one way how to do any of this. I worked with her for a really long time. She was like, mostly at one point, she was just like, I don't even know why you're still coming to me. Because she just gave me all of these tools and all of these different ways to learn, that she gave me all of the tools I needed to be able to figure out how to educate myself when the teachers were too overwhelmed to work with me individually. And because my mother was so determined that I was not going to fall behind, and because I had this amazing tutor who was like, yeah, you're brilliant, you can do this, you just need the tools to figure it out, which I think all kids like, you need somebody in your corner who can say like, hey, you just need someone to tell you, explain this differently to you so you can understand it. Having that, I like got to a place where I was like, okay, well, like I like am having to write now for school as you get like older, and I got bullied in middle school, and was telling, I didn't want to tell my mom about it because I like, you're a kid and it feel like, and so I told Miss Wozni, and she was like, you should write about it. And I was like, what? And she was like, yeah, write it down, write a story about it, kill the bully off in the story. Like, it's not hurting anybody, it's gonna make you feel better, like, and just be done with it. Like, and so I like started writing little stories. I was terrible at journaling. I cannot, to this day, cannot journal. And it was a way that I was like dealing with getting bullied. And uh it I was like, okay, I was finding myself through writing. And then when I went away to college, I like went to film school, and I was doing all of the like writing for classes, and writing the screenplays, and writing the regular plays because of my minor. And my friend who was in one of my theater classes was like, hey, we're doing a poetry workshop. You should come. It's performance poetry. You'll like it. And I'd like written poetry in like high school because everybody writes poetry in high school. And I had done like my literary magazine days back in high school, and I was like, okay, yeah, like that sounds like a great time. And I ended up helping run this like poetry collective for the rest of the time for like 4 years. And we did like performance nights, and we would like come like twice a month and be like, okay, well, we're gonna meet and we're gonna do all of this like work on our poetry. And it was like, okay, well, I'm doing screenplay and I'm doing poetry and all of these things. And I still felt like there was like a gap in my storytelling. And finally, like after I had graduated, I was working like 3 jobs. I had stopped doing film for the most part. I had done a couple of like little indie films, and I was taking care of my grandmother as she was dying. And I was just, it's a lot. Being a caretaker for someone who is going through any kind of illness, but particularly end of life care it just like sat on me. And I was also working 3 jobs. And I was like, okay, this is something's got to give. And I was talking to my dad, and he was like, you can quit one of those jobs. You have established yourself in the makeup community enough that you can like it will fill that hole financially. You have to quit one of these jobs. It's killing you. And I was like, okay. And so I quit one of the jobs, and then I had all this free time, and I was like, oh, like, what do I do with this? And so I started writing. I was like, I just like sat down. I was like, okay, well, I'll do like the first chapter. And I pantsed probably like the first 3 chapters of Line of Tepes. And then I got stuck. And I was talking to my dad about it. And he was like, just use bullet points. Literally, just like looks me dead in the eyes. This man who is an accountant, okay?
Huh?
He has been an accountant
Gonna ask.
his whole professional life. He was just dead in the eyes. He's like, bullet points. What are you talking about? Just bullet points. The rest of this, just you don't need sentences, just the rest of the thing. And from this foundation, the first book, the first thing, I think I wrote it in 2 months, the first draft, and I was like, oh, damn. Look, it turns out I had a lot to say. That first draft is nothing like the book that was published, but it absolutely was the foundation for it. It took me forever to edit. It probably took me a year and a half to edit, because it was just like I had to sit with it. My grandmother had did pass after I finished the first draft. So there's a lot of emotion and a lot of things about the first book deals a lot with Emma's grief. So
Mm.
there was like a lot of that process that I had just sort of like, oh, and this is how it will be when that happens. And it was, turns out not. You can't really like there are some things that you have to experience in order to be able to write. And I think that like grief turns out definitely one of them. So
Agreed. Agreed.
there were that whole thing to say that like it really is this interdisciplinary thing for me where it's like it starts out really small. It starts out as a reader. It starts out writing these little short stories. It flows into that bigger storytelling process. So I think even though screenplay writing and playwriting in general are just such a different form, a different discipline, it it is in the same like when I get stuck, I will literally write it out as a scene from a screenplay. Just like I'm like I don't know the action, I don't know anything, but I know what they're going to say to each other. And I'll just put it in bullet points like my dad said. Yeah.
Uh, your parents are amazing. Like, congratulations, right? Like the fact that your mom took your struggle with reading when you were 11 years old seriously, went and got you the help you needed. Amazing, right? Like it's really heartwarming to see this because one, a lot of parents just they don't know and they don't have the resources and whatever. And unless you're like super independently wealthy, it takes a lot of sacrifice, right? To like raise kids and especially kids that have specific needs. So awesome. And the fact that you're able to, like, it's clear that you talk to them and you're having these conversations with them and that they are encouraging to you in this pursuit of a creative lifestyle that you want to be like like that is just not a thing that happens, right? A lot of parents do not want their kids to go into theater. Like that would be their worst nightmare. Or right, go to school as a theater major or as a filmmaker because they're like it's just so challenging. How did that, like, was there ever any tension around that? Or did you, and then at what point did you know when you were a young person, this is what I'm going to pursue in my higher education? And how did your family react when you like, when that became evident?
I won the lottery. I need that. They, okay. As a teenager, I was an asshole. Okay. I think it's important to note I am I feel like being like self-aware is very important as a human being. No one is perfect, least of all me. But I mean, there are moments where I was like, I took angsty teenager and I was like, dial it up to 11. We got this. Like it is, it's a whole thing. And my, I wanted to like very much to be like cool and rebellious. And my mother, every time I was like, okay, I'm gonna listen like rock music, right? Punk music. That'll show her. And she was like, okay, well, we're gonna listen to it in the car on the way to school in the morning. And I was like, oh God. Do you know how hard it is to be cool when your mom's like, yeah, I love this song. Like it's so hard. Um, but when you have someone who's like, oh, you want to dye your hair pink? Okay, but we're gonna do it in the backyard because I don't want you to stain the tub. Like it's in seeing her say, okay, yeah, you want to do that. And my dad was like, okay, yeah, if mom says it's okay, like you can dye your hair pink, that's great. Um, the only time I can say that like for sure I know like I overstepped a line or anything. It was when I got my first tattoo. And that was like the real kicker. Like my art, they were like they took one look at me in the womb and like in the sonogram and they were like she's going to be an artist. It's not. But the my mom's hard line was like you're not going to get a tattoo. And I was like ding. And she saw like when she saw it, I thought she was going to just I thought I was going to like puke and pass out at the same time. I got it like on my hip, so it was like I could cover it up. It was not as sneaky as I thought. It was a whole thing. Uh,
What was it? Can I ask that? What was it?
it's a bird carrying a rose because I'm super original. No,
Whatever.
it's like a new Americana little sparrow holding a rose, and I love it. I have no regrets about it. But as far as like that's probably the most rebellious moment where I was like, yeah, she was not into it. She still is like, it's cute, but I really would appreciate it if you wouldn't get more where they're visible. She's not on the bandwagon. But I mean, like when I was going off to college, I was literally like getting into my car and like driving away, and my dad like is like doing the thing that like very Norman Rockwell, where he's like holding the door open, like saying goodbye. And he was like, "I love you, sweetie, so much. Like, be careful. Don't be an accountant," and slammed the door. Like, like don't love you. Don't be an accountant. All right, cool. I talked to my sister. I was like, "Hey," I'm like on the way to school. Like, "Hey, did he say this to you too?" No, he did not. He did not give me the "don't be an accountant" speech. She she went to business school. She was like, "Yeah, no." He was like, I think they just sort of my parents both come from big families, and I think they were like, they only had two of us, and I think they were like, we are going to really give them as much and care and attention as we can. And I don't know how I got so lucky. I don't know. I would be a different person if it weren't for
Yeah.
that. And
Yeah.
not I would not be a better person. That's for sure. Because if you had met me in high school, you would know. You'd be like, no, I think you would be like you like that. Just like there are just moments where I have where I was like, I was trying so hard to be rebellious, and I'm like, oh no. And mom was just like, yeah, whatever. Cool, cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. These are two very skilled people. Clearly, they know
Oh
what they're
my God.
doing. Yeah.
They should teach classes.
Yeah, they really should. That's fantastic. Yeah. And clearly it worked because you are doing great things. Like you are, look, it's not an easy path to be a creative, right? Especially if that's your profession. It's not easy to make money. It's not easy to get, you know, out there, get your name out there. But you're doing what you love to do. You're doing it well. You are building your audience, you're building your fan base, and you're doing it consistently. And I think that that's, man, from where I'm sitting, that's the dream. That's what we wanted. That's what we want to be. Not everybody gets to be Stephen King.
I I also think that like Stephen King has become now like I like this sort of like idol that we kind of look up to that's not even really Stephen King anymore. It's just like that idea of like what he means to each of us of being able to like write what you want when you want and support yourself on your art. I like all of the hard things that I have done, all of the things that I give up in order to be working in this industry, working as a creative like at all because makeup artistry is still in that space. I think that there is like you have to say like you have to be kind to yourself and you have to be kind to that like um that little kid that wanted to do it in the first place and to be able to be like okay yes there are hard moments and still like have that space to like come back and be like okay I still love this. Like even on the bad days, even on the days when I'm blocked, I still love doing this and have support not just from my absolutely amazing family, but also from my amazing community, like with the Armadillo Authors Society, which is you as well. Like being able to like come back and be like, "Oh my God, like guys, like this is like why do we do this again?" Like everybody who's anyone who's ever queried a book, anyone who has ever been like I'm made the decision to go independent and you have that like moment where like oh God like I don't even know there are days I still wake up where I'm like oh like I get to write today like oh my God like I figured it out while I was sleeping here's how I'm gonna fix this plot hole and there's just like a, a magic to it and I hope that like when I am writing about magic that I am like giving it that light that it gives me if that I think that makes sense but
It
like
makes perfect sense. It sure does. Wow. Well, that's that's amazing and very inspiring. Um, I like to ask, there's two things I usually like to ask when I talk to folks on my podcast. One is about the role of creative community. And you know, I'm an introvert. I avoided creative community for a long time because I felt like it would just be more effort. Like I don't want to go to a meeting. I don't want to do this. I don't want to have to engage with somebody else because I don't have that much energy. And yet, when I started to actually make these connections and work with other people and join these groups, I found myself getting way more out of it than I put in, right? And so I am now a fan. I'm now a fan of creative community. Talk to me about, how your community, either the current one or wherever you kind of plugged in the first time, has helped you, you know, sort of evolve as a creator. What does it do? What has it done for you? What does it do for you? What are the like net benefits to being part of creative community for you?
I think as as creators full stop talking about it in any sense of the community there is this tendency it's like a very human idea of like I'm gonna compare myself and my work to other people's work and when you're when I'm by myself and it's for an extended period of time um that tends to be something that I do in a negative way. I tend to be like, oh, well, I'll never be Stephen King. I'm never gonna be like J.K. Rowling. I mean, not really don't want to be right now, but like It was just like, when you like look down and you're like, oh shit, I'm gonna say that. But just like you're never gonna hit those like heights of like, ooh, super famous. You know them by they're like at the front of the bookstore. When you're by yourself, at least in my experience, when I'm by myself, that like I'm comparing my work to them in a way that's like I'm never gonna like experience those heights. I'm never gonna get to that layer of prose. I'm never gonna hit that legendary status. Versus like with community, it's like, hey, like you said this bit right here, and it reminds me of King. You hit this bit over here, and it reminds me of TK Fisher. Like these moments when you're like, oh, I'm hitting like it's me, but it's someone is comparing me to someone else in this way that's like, hey, I read this book that I loved, and I want to like tell you, like, I think it maybe sounds like this. Maybe you want to read it and like see where that took them and get inspiration, or just there to like lift you up. Um, I think that role is, I think, one of the first things that you notice when you enter into a community. If your community isn't lifting you up, it's not the right one for you. It's just like full stop. And I have been in communities where it's like where you come in and you're like, oh, ooh, I feel bad when I'm here. I feel
Hmm.
again like I have done theater shows where it's like I am here because I need the school credits. Like everybody here hates everybody else. We're just getting this shit done. And you see it in the final product. Like you see that like soullessness. It that sometimes it's not soullessness, sometimes it's very soulful hatred. Like there is that space where it's like sometimes it's not working, sometimes it's turned toxic, but in the best versions of all the creative communities that I've been, it has been that like space where it's like, oh, I wrote this poem because you wrote a poem and I loved your poem. So I wrote one inspired by that. And the second somebody does that, I I had somebody do that to me. Like I performed at a poetry thing when I was in college. We did. Now, when I say it was called the Punk Poet Society, my friend started it. He is an amazing poet. He's out in Portland. They are like just killing it. But they just like they were like, I really like this poem that you did. It's not my style at all, but it really inspired me to write a poem in my style. Is that okay? And it was, you hear that and you're like, oh my God. Like it hits different when it's your creative friends who are in the same, like you're in the same fight together and they're like, no, you inspired me to keep going. And then you're like, oh, well, I'm keep going. Like if you keep going, I keep going. And it's almost like you're like feeding off of each other's energy.
Yep.
And I have to imagine that that's what extroverts feel like all the time. Because I like to joke that I'm an introvert in disguise because I can do this and be like very like out and about and be like, okay, like let's talk to the people. And then I'm like, do not talk to me. I need to like go into my hobbit hole. I need to like get a book or a Dr. Pepper, which I am drinking a Dr. Pepper right now. I'm just like, I need some caffeine and have some feelings. Like,
Yeah.
but there is that like that energy of like it just keeps on in the right space, it just keeps on building. And the comparison stops being that negative comparison and it starts being like positive and it starts being like, yeah, because it feels like this, but I think maybe like the wording might need a little bit of tweaking. I have had some really amazing critique groups that I've helped run and that have I've gone to. I one of my favorite moments in like a creative community, I almost got the cops called on me at a poetry critique group. I know, of all
That
things.
is awesome.
Um, it was the Punk Poet Society, so I do have to like shout out.
What kind
Uh,
of wait, hold on. What kind of punk is gonna call the cops?
oh no, it was the neighbors.
Oh, okay,
We're
okay,
not
okay.
calling the cops on ourselves.
Okay, good.
No, no. But we had like been talking about our poem like poetry forever, and my friend had this like absolutely astounding poem, and my other friend and I who had been critiquing it, we've been like making it better all night, and we just started like talking really loudly. It started out as this discussion about postmodernism, and then we both agreed that this poem that we were critiquing was postmodern, but we couldn't agree on how it was postmodern, and it ended up as like a screaming match, a passionate screaming match where we were both like, I understand what you're saying, but I think it's this. And like with just like wine glasses in our hands, and we had made it out to the front porch because like we're all poets and like half of us smoked. I do not smoke. Mom, if you listen to this, I do not smoke. But, and we were just standing out there with like solo, because we're in college, remember? So solo
Yes.
cups full of cheap, cheap red wine, just shouting about postmodern poetry and how we both agreed that it's postmodern, but not on how it is. And then the neighbors came out and they thought we were having like a domestic dispute. And I was like, that's one of my favorite memories. Like, just because it was so utterly ridiculous. It's just absurd to have that, like, have that happen to you, to be doing it in the first place. But it was, it's like 1 o'clock in the morning. We're just yelling on the porch about postmodern poetry.
I mean, that is pretty much my idea of a good time right there.
Yeah.
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 It was like one of those things where it's like, oh, I think that people write this shit into screenplays that everyone thinks is fake. It was like, oh, I'm having like a cinematic moment
Yeah.
in my real life. And it was like a front porch on like it's in Denton, Texas, if you've ever been. Those like it's big wide streets, little like the houses are super close together. It's very picturesque. And I was like, all right, yeah, this is a like Netflix moment of
Yeah. I can see it. And and I think that's I actually I love that. I love that your story about creative community includes conflict, and that it includes the cops getting called on you, um, and that it
almost
includes
almost getting
not
the cops called.
almost getting, sorry, almost. And
The
then
worst,
just
the
this
cops
idea,
coming is a different story.
huh?
I said the cops coming is a different story. We'll talk
Oh,
about that.
oh shit. Okay.
It
Good
has
to
nothing to
know.
do with it. It does actually have creative community. You know what? We'll talk about
Okay.
it.
Okay. But like I feel like this is a really good sort of snapshot about, about what real creative community looks like. I think we get in our heads about like what this should be. What does it look like to be in, and some of it's very hippy dippy and some of it's maybe like ultra professional. But I think that, when I think back of like Le Chat Noir in France back in the day, and all these poets and artists would like hang out and like drink wine all night. And like that's to me, that is creative community. And I love that it doesn't take its like for me, creative community that takes itself too seriously is inhibiting.
Yeah.
And so this idea that you can be with people, you can be messy, you can be loud, you can be silly, you can be hooched, whatever, and still really be sort of have and be forming these experiences that stay with you for the rest of your life. I think that's a great story. I think that that makes way more sense than trying to convince people that what they need is to go on a 2-day retreat every quarter and sit around in a circle, on beanbags.
I think there is like there is space for that sort of formalized community, but I think that it's really, you said something about like not taking itself too seriously. I think you have the formal community, and then you have this sort of like informal community that is like, okay, you have to have a space where it's like we get down to business. You need a place where it's like I need to very seriously ask someone here about AI rights. I need to be able to go to someone I trust and feel comfortable with to ask them about like how much should I be asking like in any of these negotiations? What is the like pie in the sky hope if I land an edit or an agent, and what is realistic? You have to have those conversations that are that are formal, they're a little uncomfortable, but you also have to be able to like have those same people go to them and be like, I have a body in my trunk. Like, and then you open your trunk and it's just a manuscript that is
Yeah.
completely disorganized. You have to be able to have those like those friendships because I do think that like every time I write a new manuscript, every time I write a new piece of anything, a new poem, a new short story, that's my baby. That's a little piece of me that I have like I've shaped them as best I can and I'm sending it out into the world. And when I ask someone for when I am sharing it for the first time, it's with people I trust. And you want to be able to like go to those people. And I don't necessarily want to do that in a formal setting. I want to be able to like send an email to like the person who I was like on the front porch screaming at, be like, listen, I have this thing. I want your input on it because I know you have a different point of view and you're comfortable enough sharing that with me and not being fake about it. Because formality can lend itself to this sort of like fake in a way that it's like it's for politeness sake, it's for like keeping the calm and the peace and the civility of things. And the informal is the space where it's like, I have called you a bitch 6 times in this conversation, but if you called me at 4 a.m. and you needed a ride, I am there. That space gives you like the trust that you need to carry on into this space.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes they overlap. Sometimes the people who are in your informal groups come into your formal groups, and sometimes it's quite literally your professors and professionals who you trust and know you can trust because you've talked about it over here and you
Mhm.
have those spaces informing each other. I definitely have had formal experiences where I'm like, oh, this was incredibly helpful. And I would not in any way talk to this group in the same way that I would talk to this group because this is formal space and this is professional Annie, professional EA Williams, and over here is karaoke,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
don't ask me to go to karaoke, please.
I
I'm very
I
bad
will
at
not.
it.
I will not. Don't
Okay,
don't
good.
worry. Do not worry. Um, yeah, you know what I think the word you used was trust, and I think that that is a really important point. Creativity, and I don't know that this ever goes away, but especially if you're just starting out or you're trying something new, I was personally not prepared for how vulnerable I felt during this process. Like there, I'm telling you, in writing a novel, the writing was the easy part. The majority of my struggle was against myself, my shitty feelings, my weird head games that I was playing, all of this stuff, right? And that's when I say that I benefit from creative community, I'm not talking about necessarily expertise, but I guess that is a really important piece of it. I don't want people giving me BS. I want good information. I want people who have been there before, but I also really just want a place to go and be like, holy shit, this is hard. Like I don't know if I can do this. And have somebody like snap out of it. Of course you can do it, right?
Mhm.
And I think that that's I guess creative community plays all kinds of roles for all kinds of people, but for me, I've found that it has to be the blend of those two things. I don't know that I can take serious criticism from somebody that I don't trust, and I don't think I can trust somebody that I can't be vulnerable with, and I don't know that I can be vulnerable with somebody if I feel like if there's like this huge differential between their expertise and my ability.
I that's and in that space where it's like there is like a huge difference between the two, that's when like knowing that it's in a formal space where it's like I am here specifically to ask you
Yeah.
on high person of like about your expertise. And I need that in a formal space because it makes me more comfortable. Because it is a more vulnerable space when you're like, I'm coming to you. I know you know more stuff about this than I do. Please help me. And when it's in a formal setting, you kind of get that feeling of like, well, if they're an asshole, I can just like complain to their manager kind of vibes. Versus like when you're in a creative community that's in that informal state and someone's an asshole to you, you're like, oh, is it me? And is it my work? Am I just terrible at this? And then it's like, oh, and it all comes crumbling down. And then you like have to sweep it all into a dustpan and like start over. And I think we all kind of go through that phase of like, okay, well, I thought I found my community over here, but it's not really working out. And then you have to kind of like swing back and forth and until you find it. But it's so incredibly worth it to do that extra like, okay, like go to the conference and talk to people. How I found like the what became Armadillo Authors Society was I went to my very first writing conference and
Mhm.
I made a deal with myself that if I was going to spend the money on the hotel room and the ticket, which was not cheap and was a big burden on me at the time, that I was going to talk to everyone. If they looked at me for long enough, I was going to open my mouth and I was going to say hi and we were going to talk. If nothing else, I was going to be like, "Hi, my name is Annie. I write vampires." Like if nothing else, and it was like I am like in that space that's really intimidating. There's hundreds of people. It was the editor agents and editors conference from
Oh,
Writers League of Texas, and it's a huge conference. It's in a huge hotel. It's in Austin. I've never lived in Austin, so I was not very familiar with the area or anyone. And I made that deal, and I met people who like to this day like where like the I think like the first six of us met at that conference and we have still that was 2017.
wow.
Yeah.
That's so that is actually really inspiring, Annie, because I am like one of those people that I don't want to go network. Like it just doesn't feel good to me. But on the other hand, how are you gonna meet people? You've got
I
to go.
in that context, I was like, okay, well, I had this like thing. I was like, I kept telling myself, like, these are other writers. These are other people who love what you do, love the thing, like the same thing you do. If nothing else, you have that in common. And we can just like breathe through it. And then, like, after that first night, this was back when before COVID. So we did like, they had like parties and things at the end of like that night. And it was like, okay. I can do this. I've met some people. We're gonna go have some drinks together in this like networking party. And I have this thing that clicks on and it's why my like all my friends call me their mom friend. And it is like, oh, you find this thing hard. It's no longer hard for me because it's hard for you and you need to taken care of. And it's like much easier for me to be like, oh, hi, have you met my friend Rowana? She writes. Like, here you go. Let's talk. Well, yes, she writes humor. She's phenomenal at this. This is my friend Q. She is like, she writes sci-fi. She's phenomenal at this. And I'm much better at like networking for other people.
Yep.
And then it's like all of a sudden you're like, well, what do you write? I just write vampires. It's okay. You don't have to look at me. Please don't look at me. Please, for the love of God, don't look at me. Like it there is that sort of like wall of like, okay, I've got to like separate myself from like that's where I like going back all the way to the beginning of this conversation, like that's where having this sort of mythos about yourself, having this brand persona is so easy because it's like, okay, well, like actually EA can take care of this. Annie, who is definitely an introvert and like really just wants a blanket and a cup of tea, she can take a break and EA is gonna like step in and talk about the book because it like I love this book, but I don't have to be as vulnerable with it in that persona as I am as Annie who wrote it versus EA Williams who published it, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
If there is like a disconnect. There's like a compartmentalization that having that space allows you to take. Um, there is probably a therapist who will listen to this and be like, I think there's a few things wrong with that, but I view it,
Whatever.
don't tell me. I don't need to know. It's okay. But I appreciate having that space between the two, like myself writing the book in a vulnerable space and presenting like E.A. Williams as the person who published it. They're the same person, but there's just like a little bit of like armor that I can
Mm.
wear.
I love it. I love it. This, you know what? This conversation is amazing. Like I am just learning all these things. Okay, I should talk to you more often.
We can talk whenever you want.
Okay, good. All right. Well, before we wrap up, let me ask this because I do like to ask this for people who are listening, who, like one of the most common goals, I guess, that people have is to write a novel.
Mhm.
So many people want to write a novel. And I'm fine with that. Like the more the merrier. I want people to write novels and I want to read them. Um, but it is a daunting thing. And the statistics, the people who set out, the number of people that set out to write one versus people who get it finished, much less get it published. I mean, it's just a fraction. Um, so as somebody who has successfully written three, almost four entire novels, what advice do you give the person who's sitting there thinking, can I do this? I got a job. I have to, I got kids. I have this. I have that. I didn't get a degree, a creative writing degree, like all these excuses that we throw up in our heads to sort of undermine this dream that we have. And assuming that we've really done the work and like made it clear to ourselves, yes, this is something I want to do, something I'm passionate about. I have an idea and I want to follow it through. What advice do you give to those people when they're setting out?
I have a very specific piece of advice because I do actually get this quite a lot. Outline, 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 outline. I like I said, I pantsed pretty much the first three, four chapters of Line of Tepes, and I got stuck and I got disheartened, and it was like, what am I doing now? Like, what is this? What's the next thing? I and I was just like, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where I'm going. I don't know where this is going to end. I know that I want to write a book. I know that I have the time to write a book. Like I was in a phenomenal position at the time to be like I had the time to do it. And I have this amazing community that's like saying like, yeah, you can do it. You should. I like what you do. And then it was like, oh, well, where do I go from here? Once I started outlining, like I said, my dad saying like do those bullet points, which my first outline was literally just bullet points of like things I wanted to happen.
Mhm.
And it was messy and not anything that you think of when you're talking about uh, like outlining or you're thinking about someone who has this sort of like I do think there's like a romance to being a pantser, to being like no, it just flowed out of me. That is great. And I think that if that's your process, I am so impressed with it. I get these ideas that come in so quickly that like I'll get an idea and be like, "Oh, I really want a scene where she hits him in the head with a hammer." And it'll be like, okay, but who is she hitting in the head with a hammer? When does that happen? When does it fit in this book? Is it for this book? Is it for a short story? Where is it? And you just sort of have to like, okay, how do you deal with all of this creativity? How do you deal with the things that the story could be? And how do you find out what the story is? And rather than say, oh, you have this mountain to climb, you have this big piece of marble you have to turn into a statue, like go ahead and draw it out. Go ahead and say like I want to start here. I knew that I wanted to start at a graveyard. Like that
Mhm.
was from the moment I put pen to paper. I was like I want this series to start on a rainy day in a graveyard. And it turned into like here's where I think the story like once I got into that space of like okay, well I need to outline and know where this is going. I was like this is where I think it's going to end. You give yourself like that right there is an outline. Like
Yeah.
it's two things and you have a place to go. You have a direction to go in. And when you say like, okay, well, I'm going to go south, like you can start the car. You can take that first step with confidence. So as annoying as it is to say, hey, outline your work, and I think that a lot of people, I get a lot from people who are like, oh, if I outline, it takes the creativity away. It doesn't have to. I think
No.
that we decorate our houses, right? You can walk into like everyone's apartment looks different, even in a big apartment building that all the apartment units are essentially the same when you walk in. You decorate your house how you want to live. You decorate your story inside the structure you give it. If you don't give it enough structure, the house is going to fall down. And for for a first step, if you are struggling and you know this is something that you want to do and you know you're willing to put the work in, give yourself the structure, build the house, and then decorate it.
Yeah. I'm a big fan of that idea. The sort of pantsing versus plotting thing. And I truly believe that a happy medium is where you go. I feel freer. And I did the same thing. I started writing my book just writing. Like I had no outline, nothing. And I didn't get stuck per se, but I was just like, what? Like it's too many options. And
Yeah.
somebody, I can't remember who I was talking to about this, but it was on this podcast. And they were saying, oh, it was my friend Tom Meyer. We were talking about how art needs limits. You need to be able to work within something. It's really hard to just be like, okay, well, there's no rules and there's no limits and anything can happen. And that just makes things very unfocused and it makes it just sort of, I don't know. It doesn't, it's not cohesive. And when people, the art of telling a story is to tell a cohesive story. It's to tell a story that takes somebody on a journey. When I open a book, I'm putting my faith in this writer that they're going to tell me, they're going to take me somewhere. I don't
Yeah.
have to worry about where I'm going. I'm going to end up exactly where I need to be. I'm going to put on my little seatbelt and here we go. Take me on a ride. And if you don't have that clear in your head, if you don't know where you're going, if you don't know where you're taking somebody,
Yeah.
it's just going to meander and people are going to get frustrated and you're going to get frustrated and it's just not going to be it's not going to be good. And so this idea which I love, which is, and your dad's bullet points, right?
Yeah.
Give yourself scaffolding. Give yourself just enough so that you don't have to worry about where you're going. You know where you're going, so that then you can start concentrating on the fun stuff, which is
Yeah.
all the embellishment and all the imagination that goes into that story.
I also think that you get the outline gets this bad rap of being like, oh, it takes so much energy to do an outline. I think that people think that you have to, or I'm outlining every single scene.
Right.
I'm outlining to begin with maybe 10 major plot points. And I'm really, like, I've been talking about this a whole lot lately. I'm really going in and saying, like, is what's the arc of my story, right? Am I working within a 3 act structure? Am I working in a 7 act structure? Like, which comes back to like all of my work as when I was doing film school, which is like, okay, am I working in that space? Am I working episodically? I wrote all three of these books as if they were a season of a television series, which is like every single chapter. When you hit a chapter break, that's a commercial break.
Hmm.
Like, and it gives that space, knowing that like, okay, well, we've watched enough movies to know what that looks like. It's like we've got the rising action, the climax, and the finale. Okay, just give yourself a few extra points in between those three, and you've got yourself a basic scaffolding, like you were saying. I think that like the idea of outlines in that sort of like, oh, well, it has to be every single chapter has an outline and every single character has their own outline. No, start with this like really brass tacks, really bare bones. If you need a timeline, do a timeline. If you want to do a beat sheet, do a beat sheet. Um, and then just like, okay, well, you get to that point, you're like, okay, well, I got halfway through writing this chapter. I've got no more gas in the tank. I'm going to put all of my ideas into these bullet points of like, this is what I think is going to happen in this. And I'm going to call it a day. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to call it a day. Come back to it tomorrow. I don't want to look at that chapter. It wasn't the gas in the tank for that chapter. It's something about that chapter is just not vibing with me. Okay, skip ahead. You know where you're going.
Yeah.
You can skip 4 chapters ahead. You know where you're going. And then if you, okay, I've done this so many times where I'm like, okay, I can't deal with like character X, Y, and Z today. Like they're too much. They've got especially when I was doing Line of Tepes, when I was dealing with all like I mean, you never really stop dealing with grief over things, but I was really fresh with dealing with my grandmother. And Emma, in the story, her grandmother passes. That's the inciting incident, happens before even the book starts. So I just like I couldn't deal with some of the parts where they're talking about her grandmother, and I couldn't do it. And it took me months to get to like a place where I could go back to those chapters and do the edits that I needed to. So I just skipped ahead to like the parts that were like, no, like I can do the part where the like they're breaking into stuff and they're like fighting. I can do that part today. So it allows you in the way that I feel like it does, like an outline allows you more freedom to be creative and wild and take chances that you're like, okay, well, if I'm gonna kill everybody off in this zombie movie at the end, I'm gonna do some wild shit in between. Like, do it. You've got the space and you know where you're going. It gives you playtime.
Yeah, and I like that. I like this description because one of the things I ran into, I started writing a completely different novel, and I found that I was dreading sitting down each day to write it because it was so emotionally heavy.
Yeah.
And I don't think I was mentally prepared for how much emotional labor goes into writing, even something as trivial as my book, which is not, it's about an alien, right? Like there was emotional labor that went into it. And I just, you can't turn that on. It's not an on and off switch. And we
No.
go through these periods where we're like, I can't do this. I can't sit here and wallow in this right now because I don't have the energy. Having that structure, like you're saying, does allow you to skip ahead or, work in different ways based on how much specific kinds of energy that are available to you. And maybe if you're just in your head and you need, you just need to do, you need to focus on something else, you can still work on your stuff. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to force yourself through and again get discouraged or get in that place where you're just like, I can't do this.
Well, you get to like you were talking about the space where you're dreading coming to this novel. Even if you want it, even if you want it more than anything, if you wake up every morning and you are like scared or upset to sit down and write those words, even if you do sit down and write those words, they're not going to be good.
That's right.
Like it back to like it all comes full circle when we were talking about communities of it, like when you get into a toxic community and you see that the product of it being not like soulless or angry, you see that in the work. So I would much rather take the boring part on the like the front side. Let's go ahead and say I'm gonna do maybe a week's worth of for me, I do now that I have gotten 3 books out, I'm working on it's not part of the series, but I'm working on a 4th book right now. That's a psychological thriller. Like now that I am have done this process a few times, I'm like my outlines are much bigger. I have more fun making them. It takes me longer, but if I'm going to take a day or two when I was first starting out, just like writing down a couple bullet points, even if it's just like, okay, well, okay, this happens because this happens and because like, and you just sit there for a minute. I'd rather take 2 days than spend the next year
Yeah.
trying to fight with a manuscript that is just, well, like, oh my God, but not to like throw it back to the new play or to the good place, but like Chidi's manuscript when he was like, it's like you've changed it 400 like a million times and it's so long, and I'm like, I think the first draft of the Line of Tapish was 85,000 words, and
Wow.
then I did some edits. It ballooned out to 130, and then it got cut down to 80, and then it went back and now it's I think it sits at like 95. And I was like,
Wow.
it's gone through so many, and I like when that part in the good place came out, I was like, oh my God, I've done that. I felt so attacked. It was
The
like
struggle is real. The struggle
so
is
real.
real. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But it
All right.
I do think it's like a better book because I did all of that work and now know you kind of learn on the first book like what works for you and what doesn't.
Yeah. And that's the other thing that I was not expecting because this is the first novel I've written. And I feel like I am a completely transformed writer. Like
Right.
I know all these things now that I do not want to ever do again. And I know what I actually do want to do and what's going to work for me. Uh, but like pushing through those 2.5 years, it was like torture. Like it was hard learning. And like maybe some people are different. Maybe some people have the ability to like learn from other people's mistakes, but I am not one of them. So like it was all just like, man, I felt like I was going through a gauntlet, actually. It was a rough couple of years. But now that I'm on the other side of it, I'm like, holy shit, I understand this in a completely different way. And the way I go about this next novel is going to be completely different. And to me, that's so thrilling. Like the ability to see that much growth in myself, not just creatively, but like psychologically, emotionally, spiritually, all these things that I went through in such a short period of time. I've never done anything that has transformed me as a human being that fast than the 2.5 years I spent writing a novel. So, yeah, like it's hard, but it's so rewarding. It's so rewarding and it's so exciting and it is a learning process. And I think the thing that, you know, that we just have to keep reminding ourselves is that you are not a finished product, right?
Exactly.
You are always going to be evolving. You're not going to look back on that first novel and be like, this is the greatest thing I've ever written. It shouldn't be the greatest thing you've ever written, right?
I always think that like that should be the next thing, right?
Right.
You should we're going to get better. We're going to have a different point of view. We're going to learn something new. I think that like one of the really like great things about being a writer is that like every time I learn a new thing, it changes a little bit of like how I'm going to write. Every time I learn a new technique, I it's never going to fit exactly right how it was given to me into my process. But there's a piece of every little piece of advice that I'm like, "Oh, I really like that. I'm going to like I tweak it like this and I bend it like this and I'll put it into my thing and like, oh, like wiggle it a little bit and you're like, "Oh, this works great. Now I do this thing." I the there's like this little piece of advice that I heard on TikTok that was like, "Oh, I it was like something about like going on a walk to like give yourself like a little break or a little treat in between all of these things. I like live in Texas and it's hot. Like it's hot all the time. I'm not going on a little walk every single day because like 9 months out of the year it's 1,000 degrees and I live in Houston, which it means it is so hot and so humid all the
Yes.
time.
Yes.
And so, like, even now, it's like super cold and it's still humid outside, which I don't, it's like, so now it's just like damp and cold and ugh.
Ugh.
But even at that, like, I was like, okay, I need like a little treat. So now I keep, like, okay, I'm going to show you. I'm going to, hang on.
Okay.
This is a candy jar. And I have, right now, it's filled with like Halloween candy, but usually I keep like little sour candies in here because like I got this piece of advice of like, oh, give yourself like a little treat when you finish something hard. And also I heard that like sour, like from an anxiety TikTok that was a completely different piece of advice, that sour candy or mints help like reset your nervous system and distract you from things that stress you out. So if I'm writing a particularly stressful thing, when I finish like a really emotional scene or I finish like or I'm in the middle of writing some like action sequence that has me stressed out, just a little sour candy or a little mint or something, just a little treat that's like, no, you're doing good. But also it's just like a quick like system reset for me that I'm like, oh, okay, oh, we can get back to it. And it's like I think I may have Pavloved myself into like writing difficult things, but there's like it didn't fit how it was into my process, but you're gonna like everybody's gonna take that piece of advice, tweak it, and make it work for them. So I think I
I
don't know.
love that. No, I do. I love that. Like I think that this is why, this idea that art is a process. It's not the product, right?
Yeah.
This is to me the most exciting and interesting part of art. And it's why I do this podcast because I want to know how people are doing it because that to me is the most like that is what it means to be human, right?
Oh, for
Is
sure.
to take in these different things and to personalize them so that you're creating this constantly evolving, constantly polished lens with which you are putting things out into the world. It's so interesting to me. And it's why there is no such thing as AI art. There just isn't, because there's no process behind that. The process is in the human element, the human being who goes out there and is like, I'm going to take this piece from this TikTok and this and all these little Lego pieces and construct my own process. And it's going to result in me producing art that no one else on the planet can produce. What the fuck? That's awesome.
It's everything you do is through a point of view. And like even the outline, I'm gonna come back to it every time. Even the outline is through a point of view. So you get to that point where it's like when you do the boring stuff in the process, you kind of like you kind of like allow yourself to like just fall into your point of view, into your author voice, rather than like struggling to search for it. And certainly that's probably the thing that like I like needed someone to shake into me when I was writing the first book is like if you give yourself all of this structure, you can like lean into the story you want to tell rather than like fighting with it. And I just like you're saying, like AI just doesn't have the ability. They can do all of this like beautiful mimicry. And when I say beautiful, I am
Yeah,
the
yeah, I got you.
very loose term here. Like it, some of it, like I've seen stuff where you're like, okay, that's AI. But I like as a makeup artist, I stare at faces all day, and when I see an AI face, I'm like, I see it immediately.
Yeah,
I have clients who bring them in, and they're like, I want this look, and I'm like, that's an AI generated picture. Like, I had one last week, and it's just very like there it's that uncanny valley and it you can see it in the artwork and you can see it in the literature. I'm gonna
yeah,
loosely use literature there as well because it's
yeah,
just it's mimicry in this very kind of insulting way. I find it incredibly offensive
yeah.
to
I don't know anybody who's a serious artist who does not find it insulting, but that is a topic for another day.
that's a different topic.
Yes.
That's a
Of
different
which we could go on for a very long time.
we
All
could
right, well,
probably spend the rest of the day talking about that, but I won't
seriously,
here.
seriously.
You know what? It would end up with someone would call the cops on us, and we wouldn't have solo cups, and it wouldn't be about postmodernism. We
I
agree
have
on.
unfortunately, I have a cop that lives across the street from me. So,
No, he wouldn't even
yes,
have to call. He'd just come across the street.
yeah, he's used to it. It's fine. All right. Well, Annie, this has been such a delightful conversation, and you have been so generous with your time. I'm sorry we've gone really long.
Oh,
Um,
that's totally fine. I was having a great time talking with you.
Yeah, you are brilliant, and I've learned so much just in this conversation. I can't wait to go back and listen to it again. For listeners, we will be linking to all of Annie's E.A. Williams offerings and websites and other cool social media, other ways that you can follow her and find her. And highly recommend that you read something. Even if you're not a vampire girly, go find one of the other books because she's written in different genres and it's definitely good reading. It's good reading.
I so appreciate that. I'm trying. I feel like it's me. If nothing, if even if people don't like it, I feel like it's a good representation of the type of media I like to consume and the type of story I like to tell. So even if
Amazing.
you're not a vampire girly.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, by the way, I didn't tell you. I read Twilight for the first time this year. I had never read it, never saw the movies. My kids were born in 2003. I had
Okay.
twins. And so like I have this big hole in my
Yeah.
popular culture knowledge. So I decided to go back and fill some of it in. And I read Twilight, just the first book.
Hmm.
Um, with no like I know the memes and stuff, so I have
Yeah.
some understanding, but I didn't really ever get into it. And so that is the most recent vampire book I've read. And I gotta tell you, it was terrible, but I read the whole thing.
Yeah.
And there like it was compelling. It was
I think
compelling.
that there is the thing we were talking about when we were at the beginning of the conversation, like cringe, is I will defend Twilight.
Yeah.
It is not the kind of vampires that I write, but it is you're talking about like it is a vessel for the type of story that it is. And it like this like space that it made for teenage girls to talk about their feelings and to talk about boys in a way that you're like, hey, like actually, like he's not, you know what? Break up with Brian because he's not an Edward. He's not even a Jacob or like whoever they team Jacob, team Edward, however that was. It gives you, if you're making space for yourself and making space to read, that's a good thing.
Yep.
Like like how I feel about it now as an adult is different than how I felt about it as a teenager. And like that's really like that space of like the first wave of like YA focused, like young adult for anyone who doesn't know what YA stands for. That was like that first wave of like YA literature. It's the brand new subgenre that was being created. And you're saying like, okay, like let's write a book specifically for this group of people. And let's write something. I mean, like Stephanie Meyer's, I forget how that went out. Like she had a dream, and that was like part of the process is she had a dream about it, and then it became Twilight. And I mean, there's the whole conspiracy theory about like Twilight wouldn't exist if My Chemical Romance didn't exist because it's actually My Chemical Romance fan fiction. Um, oh,
I wow.
that's a wormhole, which like it all comes back to like the only reason that Twilight exists is 9/11 happened because the only reason that My Chemical Romance exists is because Gerard Way was on the ferry going across the river when 9/11 happened and he saw it happen and he was like I don't have like life is not infinite. I have to do what I want to do right now and he made a band. And then yeah, so it's like this, oh my God, it's a conspiracy theory. If there's any conspiracy theory that like just feels like you just should know about it, it's that one.
Okay, now I'm gonna go research this.
Yeah.
I actually enjoy conspiracy theories, just for entertainment purposes, and this definitely sounds like something that I would enjoy. But to that point, I have a friend who's a prolific reader.
Mhm.
She's not a writer, and I posted that I had read that book, and she said something like, "Yeah, that's what got me back into reading." And I was
Mhm.
like, "Well, then it's good."
Yeah.
Like now she reads everything and she reads hundreds of books a year, right? But that was the one that like as an adult, she's like, "Oh yeah, maybe I want to start reading again."
The like I feel like this conversation has been so like full circle on every topic, but that idea of like this is what got me back into reading, the like that sort of like meanness about intellectualism that I was talking about earlier,
Yep.
I very much think that it sort of like leaves a lot of people who would like to read out. And it's sort of like we're taught in that space, like if you're reading, you can only read what's worth reading.
Hmm.
And here are those things. And it's a very like very specific, very structured, like it like you can read this kind of book and this kind of book and this kind of book. And if anything has a wizard, it's not worth your time. You're wasting your time. Okay, I want to read about wizards. I would like a dragon, please. And if there's a hot man who takes his shirt off, I will take that too. I like, and you can have all of those cool, fun things, and then also have a conversation in the middle of that, that is really serious and really important to like know. there is a conversation about agency happening in Twilight, that it got people talking about like age gap romances and what is appropriate and what isn't. What is the boundary between childhood and adulthood? When can we make the decisions for ourselves that are literally life-changing, like having a baby or turning into an immortal vampire? When are we adult enough to be prime adults? That conversation is happening in Twilight, even if you don't want to interact with it. If you just want it to be like hot boy finds girl, stares at her while she's sleeping, it can absolutely be that story. Or it could be a conversation starter for you and your teenage daughter to say, hey, like sometimes male attention isn't good, even though makes us feel special. Like you have that space that it opens up, even
Yeah.
if you're not thinking about it, and genre like just slips right in. It makes
Yep.
all of these conversations that are really uncomfortable super palatable, and you can enjoy it as an entertainment, or you can like engage with it as like a deeper thing, and we really miss out on it when we say like, oh no, it's not an important thing because it's a road trip movie with a vampire in it, like
That's right.
you get to like ghosts are so often like a conversation about like how we're dealing with mental health. Like all of these things that make it genre also like give us a place to start when we're having real conversations in real life with each other. Like,
Yeah.
when was the last time you talked to a friend about a book that you read that was like, you were like, oh my God, I read that book too. And then you're like, oh, I really liked that book because it made me feel something about like when I had that argument with my sister 6 months ago. Why did you like it? Because I feel like maybe you're having an issue that you're not sharing with me, and we're gonna need to like have a deeper conversation. It's like social lubricant in a way.
I love it. Yeah. Yes. Agreed. And I think that there's something to be said for writing about, again, we have these intellectual hierarchies. But the reality is that there are things that are very common that everyone is dealing with. And you don't need to write some genius work of fiction to help people get through those things,
Mhm.
right? Like sometimes you just need a homey story, a really good homey story that sucks you in. And I think that's the thing, right? That's the mechanism is in order for you to work on something that's really got you in knots, or in order for you to deal with something that you're grieving or whatever, any of this stuff that's complicated in our heads, you have to create space where you can focus on that one thing. But it's almost impossible to do because our brains are like, oh no, we're going to compartmentalize everything or whatever. And so what a book does is it's so sneaky. It's like, here, and you said this, I'm going to tell you this little story. And before you know it, you're sucked in and the whole world is kind of shut out. And you have this intense emotional focus that is very hard to get without having some kind of sneaky fiction there or something, right? And it's the same reason why like my mother-in-law used to watch cheesy soap operas and cry in the afternoons, right? Like she knew they were cheesy, but she had stuff she needed to get out, right?
Mhm.
And they would be, these little dramas would just sort of like help her purge that and she would cry and then she'd be fine, right?
Yeah.
It's like that. We all need this emotional release. We all need to work through these things. And the world is just not always a safe place to do that or a conducive place to do that. And I think fiction has such an important role in helping us to work on a subconscious level. Like it comes in underneath and it's like, well, here's and before you know it, you're having dreams and you're thinking about all this stuff and like stuff just starts to work itself out. But the catalyst is a thing that maybe you weren't expecting or that, didn't come at you straight forward. It was something
I
that
think
came along. Yeah.
the most effective sneaky little stories like that come from the side. I was watching Wake Up Dead Man like 2 days ago, and or whenever it first came out, and it like they had this line, and I'm sure that lots of people are having this similar thing. But I deconstructed from the Southern Baptist Church a long time
Mhm.
ago, and a good portion of the books, the Line of Tepes series, is sort of part of that journey for me. And but there are aspects of the church that I really miss. And oh, that like it hit me their talk because one of the characters is a priest, and they had this really real moment where he's on the phone with someone who is losing a parent. And I was like, in the middle of this murder mystery, I'm like, oh God, I'm crying. Ooh, we got some cry. Like, just like, all right, this is a feeling. And it comes at you from the side, and you're like, okay, because I'm so invested already in the storytelling that when you have these emotional impacts, it does like feel like, oh no, this is happening with a friend, or it's happening like you're tricking your brain into going through this catharsis.
Mhm.
And it's just like when it happens, it can be so beautiful and so grounding and like life affirming. And then sometimes you see it and you know that something else was really good because you see something and you're like, oh, that was like just like a brick in the face. Like it was effective, but I don't think I'm gonna go back to it.
Yes, definitely. Um, okay, we can be done now. Sorry for that little detour, but
Oh no, we're good.
actually, I'm not sorry at all.
No, we're gonna embrace the cringe. We loved this conversation.
Bro, I'm all about cringe.
Oh, hell
Clearly,
yeah.
you don't know me that well yet. Like, I am queen of cringe.
I got some piece of advice recently that was the price of admission on social media is embarrassment. You have to work through the cringe because you're like filming yourself. And I do a lot of TikToks, and I'm like that initial thing is like you got to get like used to people seeing your face and you seeing your own face. And I think it's like that with writing. You got to get used to people hearing your point of view because you're going to hear it and read it all the time.
That's right. Excellent.
So
Perfect.
parting
Perfect.
piece of advice.
That was a piece of verbal punctuation, right?
Oh,
A conversational punctuation. I love it.
yes.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, ma'am. Thank you so much for your time. And like I said, we're gonna make sure everybody has links to find you, and I hope people do support you because I'm a fan.
I'm a fan of you too.
Oh, stop.
I know, really. I'm very excited to get my book. We were talking about conspiracy theories. I love an alien story. I do.
Oh, good.
Like,
Excellent. Well, this
and I
alien is very strange, and she has the persona of Joan Rivers.
hell yes. Oh yes.
Yeah.
I'm even more excited. I was excited before. Now I'm really excited.
Okay. All right. We'll get this edited